guys. Recently, I've been watching through Doctor Who from 2005 onwards with a friend of mine who's never seen the show before. We watched through Series 1 and 2 as well as the important bits of Series 1 of Torchwood. As far as release order is concerned, we're about to be on the Sarah Jane adventures. But with so much left to get through, I don't want to spend a ton of time on a kid's spinoff. Also, I don't have it on DVD. So instead, I'm going to recap the important bits of the show with unnecessary detail. My friend's name starts with an F, so we're going to call him Mr. F, like in Arrested Development.
Mr. F.
Let's start at the beginning. Doctor Who first premiered in 1963. We had William Hartnell's first Doctor and then Patrick Troughton's second Doctor. Troughton's final story saw him forced to call upon his own people, called the Time Lords, in order to defeat a rogue Time Lord called the War Chief. Time Lords have a rule where they can't use time travel to interfere with the affairs of lesser life forms. But the Doctor interferes all the freaking time. So while they help deal with the War Chief, the Time Lords also punish the Doctor by force regenerating him and exiling him to Earth. During his exile, the Doctor has two main assistants, Liz Shaw and Jo Grant, one of the longest running companions up to that point. During her run, the Doctor gains control of his TARDIS again, and at the end of that season, Jo Grant leaves the show because she wants to get married to a guy she just met. The writers also used marrying a guy they just met with Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter, and Vicky, the Doctor's pseudo-granddaughter. After Jo Grant comes Sarah Jane Smith. She's a journalist played by Elizabeth Sladen. Her time on the show with John Pertwee's third Doctor and Tom Baker's immensely popular fourth Doctor is widely considered one of the show's absolute best runs ever. However, her time on the show came to an end when the Doctor was called to Gallifrey at the end of 1976's The Hand of Fear. Humans were not allowed on Gallifrey at that time, so the Doctor drops her off in South Croydon.
Isn't Hillview Road? I bet it isn't even South Croydon. Where you dropped me off, it was in Croydon.
Where was it?
Aberdeen.
One season later, the Doctor picks up a robot dog named K9. Remember that whole thing about how humans can't go to Gallifrey? Well, the companion after Sarah Jane is a girl named Leela who not only visits Gallifrey, but like Susan, Vicky, and Jo, falls in love with the guy she just met and ends up living there full time. Leela also takes K9 Mark I with her, while the Doctor continues traveling with the same prop, but now called K9 Mark II. K9 Mark II travels with the Doctor and new companion Romana. She's a Time Lord, and she can regenerate. But eventually, Romana 2 and K9 Mark II go off on their own, leaving the Doctor traveling alone with Adric, a fate worse than death. Adric is easily the least beloved companion in the show's history. I haven't seen any of his episodes, so I can't speak with any authority on why everyone hates him, but I freaking hate this guy, and I hope he dies. Adric is around for the fourth Doctor's regeneration to Peter Davison's fifth Doctor in March of 1981. The producer at the time, John Nathan Turner, wanted to have Sarah Jane return for a few stories to ease the transition from the incredibly popular fourth Doctor into the fifth, but Elizabeth Sladen declined, not wanting to come back to do the same stuff she was doing before. J&T also had a problem with K9. He was popular with kids, but a nightmare on set.
Long K9.
Insufficient data.
Yeah, you never fucking know the answer when it's important.
Then he had an idea that would solve both problems. He envisioned a kids-oriented spin-off centering on K9 with Sarah Jane acting as the human lead. The show was called K9 and Company, and had an absolute banger of a theme song. Clearly, one of the greatest things ever put to screen. This theme song was actually named one of the worst title sequences of all time. The show itself, though, not much better. We immediately open episode 1 with a cult doing demonic rituals. There's a pentagram in the first 2 minutes of the show. I thought this was for kids. Sarah Jane is off to the countryside to visit her aunt, but her aunt had to go out of town under mysterious circumstances, so Sarah Jane's on her own. She finds a big box that someone's left for her, but before she can open it, she has to go pick up her aunt's ward, a kid named Brendan, who's out of school for Christmas break. We quickly learn that Sarah Jane has no interest in being in charge of a kid, so it's cool that she never has to do that. She and Brendan open the box and find K9. Brendan thinks K9's name is very funny.
K9.
Brendan, stop honking.
Also, K9's got jokes.
Who is the Doctor?
Sarah Jane goes to investigate her aunt's abrupt disappearance, allowing 2 members of the cult to attack Brendan. But K9 saves him. One of the cultists escapes, and K9 goes after him. Using his super futuristic tech and natural dog skills, he rolls right past the guy. He then knocks down some stuff and makes a lot of noise. Brendan follows the noise, instantly allowing the other cultist to escape. Less than 10 minutes of runtime later, Brendan gets attacked again and is kidnapped. Sarah Jane and K9 must find him. K9 stays at the house of one of the cultists and overhears a conversation where they discuss Brendan being used as a human sacrifice. Again, I thought this was for kids. And at any rate, I thought it was going to have aliens in some capacity. Neither of those assumptions were true. Sarah Jane and K-9 start searching all possible sacred locations in the area. They know that Brendan is going to be killed after midnight to fulfill a ritual of having a human sacrifice on a specific date. Luckily, they find the ritual just in the nick of time. The doctor doesn't use guns, because guns bad, but K-9 immediately lasers all these fools. Bro does not hold back. And shock, these characters that have been supposedly helping Sarah Jane this whole time were actually bad guys. Whoa. Oh, and the aunt's fine, by the way. I'm sure we'll see more of her in future episodes. This is the only episode the show ever got. This is also a Christmas special. Aside from Brendan being off for Christmas break, there's practically nothing that would indicate that this is taking place around Christmas, except for Sarah Jane and Brendan having Christmas dinner with the neighbors at the end of the story. The final moments are devoted to K-9 struggling to sing a Christmas carol. This episode is only 50 minutes long, and I feel every single one of them. This sucked. Apparently, the BBC executive who commissioned the pilot was soon replaced by a guy who didn't like it, leading to the show never being picked up for a full season. Who knows? Maybe it could have been really good, but I'm really glad that I don't have to watch more of this. In 1983, 2 years later, Doctor Who is celebrating its 20th anniversary and brings back a lot of characters. Sarah Jane returns, and the continuity of K-9 and Company are canonized in the main show, mainly just that she has her own K-9 unit. 10 years after that, in 1993, the show has a Children in Need special to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the show, despite the show being put on an indefinite hiatus in 1989. The special, Dimensions in Time, features even more returning characters, including Sarah Jane. Dimensions in Time also happens to be one of the worst things Doctor Who has ever done. In fact, it might actually just be the worst thing. Sarah Jane also appeared in an unofficial direct-to-DVD spin-off in 1995 called Downtime. I have not seen it, and you don't need to, except for a character who will not be important to Doctor Who for another 5 seasons. The following year, in 1996, 20th Century Fox tried to reboot the show with a TV movie that gave us Paul McGann's 8th Doctor and Eric Roberts' Master.
I always dress for the occasion.
Like K-9 and Company, this was supposed to be a pilot episode for a full season of television. And like K-9 and Company, that season never got made. The official live-action continuation of the show would come in 2005, when Russell T Davies would bring it back with Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor and Billie Piper as the new companion, Rose Tyler. Christopher Eccleston plays the 9th Doctor, and he's the only 9th Doctor. There aren't any other 9th Doctors. What are those people doing on the screen? Get them out of here! Throughout the first season of the revival, people wondered if it was a continuation of the classic series or a completely fresh reboot. Aside from basic lore like Time Lords and Daleks and a few Easter eggs like the Cyberman head in Vince Statton's collection, it was unclear if it was working within the same continuity as the original show. But in Series 2, a character was brought back that left no doubt. Sarah Jane was back, and she had K-9. Okay, Mr. F, you've seen this one. The Doctor and Sarah Jane both investigate the school. The Krillitanes are evil bats. The Doctor gets K-9 working again, but K-9 sacrifices himself to defeat the Krillitanes. The Doctor offers Sarah Jane a spot back on the TARDIS, but she declines. Instead, the Doctor gives her a new K-9 model, and off she goes to have new adventures. At this time, the CBBC, BBC's children's channel, wanted to make a spin-off about a young Doctor as a way to capitalize on the main show's popularity. Russell T Davies promptly shut down this idea, instead pushing for a spin-off centered around Sarah Jane after her return in School Reunion. This time, a full series was commissioned off the bat, with the first episode premiering as a New Year's special on January the 1st, 2007, and the rest of the season premiering later in the year after Doctor Who's 3rd series. Sarah Jane is back, baby! She's got sonic lipstick instead of a sonic screwdriver. She's got a little techno watch like Jack Harkness has his own little wrist thing. She has a supercomputer named Mr. Smith hidden in her attic. How did she get all of these things in the month between School Reunion and this story? Don't worry about it. She needs this stuff, partly because it's cool, and partly because K-9 is busy closing a black hole and can't do all this stuff himself. You see, back in the day, when a writer on a show like Doctor Who created a character, they owned the rights to that character. Every time K-9 was used, his creator, Bob Baker, had to give permission. While the CBBC was trying to pitch their young Doctor Who show in order to capitalize on the popularity of Doctor Who, Bob Baker was trying to make a K-9 show happen in order to do the same thing. Deals were finalized and pre-production began in 2006, around the same time School Reunion aired. This meant that K-9 could not also be used during the Sarah Jane spinoff, resulting in the character only making brief appearances for the first few seasons. But we'll get to that later. And oh yeah, we'll get to that later. First, it's finally time to talk about the first episode of the Sarah Jane adventures, The Invasion of the Bane. First things first, actually good title sequence. Thank you, Murray Gold. We then have a title card and are told that this episode is written by Russell T Davies and Gareth Roberts. Gareth Roberts was part of the old guard of Doctor Who superfans like RTD, Moffat, Gatiss, and Chibnall, who kept the franchise going through novels and other expanded media during the Wilderness years. Gareth Roberts also wrote The Shakespeare Code, which, on top of celebrating J.K. Rowling in a way that many fans do not like now, more on that later, is widely considered to be a bad episode and potentially the worst episode of Series 3. Additionally, Roberts is gay. This is important for two reasons. First, he came under fire in the late 2010s for taking an outright stance against transgenderism. This effectively got him blacklisted from any further involvement in the Doctor Who franchise. It also makes his spirited love of J.K. Rowling in 2007's The Shakespeare Code incredibly ironic, as she has since come under fire for the exact same thing. Secondly, as Davies and Roberts are both gay, I'm going to take that as an opportunity to blame any bad or weird decisions involving female characters on the fact that both writers are gay and thus obviously hate women. This is a joke. The episode begins with a monologue from Sarah Jane about the wonders of life on Earth before transitioning to a commercial for Bubble Shock, for maximum performance. This is Maria. She's the Rose or Gwen for this show. This is her father, Alan. He's the GOAT. Before we had Bandit from Bluey, we had Alan Jackson from the Sarah Jane Adventures. This guy is incredible. One thing this era of Doctor Who excelled at was interpersonal dynamics with conflict but warmth. His constant teasing and her persistent annoyance mix excellently with the very apparent trust and love they share together. And let's be clear, the dynamic between a child and her side character father in this kids show is more engaging than the dynamic between the Doctor and most of their companions for the last 10 years, with the exception of 2017 and 2023. This is Maria's mom. She left Maria's dad for Ivan the judo instructor and also steals looks of the removal men. She sucks. Is it possible that she's written like this because both writers are gay and hate women? Just throwing it out there. While Maria is helping get things from the moving truck, we get our first glimpse of Sarah Jane. That was so disrespectful. Young kid is being friendly, and Sarah Jane could not care less. This is actually pretty consistent with her characterization in K9 and Company, but it does make her come off as a little rude for a first impression. I think it makes Sarah Jane more interesting and mysterious, and ultimately makes the show a better show. But do you think there's a possibility that the writers did this because they hate women? I don't think they did. And obviously, I don't actually think they hate women. But they do write Maria's mom in a way that makes me hate her. That makes me hate that specific woman. When Maria goes to bed for the first time in her new house, she hears some strange sounds and sees some strange lights. She sneaks across the street and sees the lesbian mind-reading alien from Torchwood's Greeks Bearing Gifts, or at least an alien of the same species. As a Christian, I'm scared of lesbians, so that would freak me out too. Homophobia is a real disorder, guys, don't judge me. The next morning, Maria tries to talk to her dad about it, but is interrupted by the doorbell ringing. This is Kelsey. Okay, everyone else, Mr. F doesn't know this, but Doctor Who has a weird habit of casting young black teenage girls as the most annoying characters. Chloe Webber from Fear Her, Kelsey in this, Angie from Series 7B, Courtney from Series 8, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else. Those poor child actors. Why are they doing this to them? Is Doctor Who racist? They hate women, and they hate black people. I thought this show was supposed to be woke. Kelsey is obsessed with music channels on mid-2000s broadband television. She also drinks Bubble Shock, which contains Bane. They tell you in every commercial. She says the Bubble Shock bus is free and comes every half hour. It's not really free though. It doesn't cost money, but it does cost your dignity. Just look at this thing. Before they leave, Sarah Jane walks by and we get this absolute gem of an interaction. You can tell Sarah Jane has been on her own way too long. She does not have time for people. But you can tell that she starts to make an effort until Kelsey and Maria mention they're going to the Bubble Shock factory. Maria's dad, Alan, is trying to be friendly and neighborly, and Sarah Jane responds like a normal, well-adjusted person. Then she tries to run him over with her car for being too friendly. Kelsey calls Sarah Jane the Mad Woman, but Maria clearly likes her because she talks to aliens. She also doesn't know that Sarah Jane nearly ran over her dad with her car. On the Bubble Shock bus, they discuss the merits of Bubble Shock. It's like energy drinks for adults, but with the cringy Logan Paul edge of Prime for kids. The advertisements point out that it contains Bane, an ingredient that does not exist on Earth. So they're literally telling you that this is from outer space. But no one asks any questions because it's organic, and that's good. Sarah Jane slips through the Bubble Shock gate just behind the Bubble Shock bus so she can explore the Bubble Shock factory. Bubble Shock is designed to be delicious for 98% of the world's population. They manage this by scanning humans going in for factory tours and using information from the scans to grow their own human they call the archetype. The more they do this, presumably, the more addictive they can make Bubble Shock until even the 2% like Maria can't get enough of it. On the tour, great value Zac Efron tells all the guests to turn off their phones because it interferes with equipment. He also gives them constant free samples and hates his job. One shot lingers on value brand Gibby from iCarly carrying as many free samples as possible, but I much prefer this kid who picks up and sort of compares two different drinks. Like, ooh, which flavor should I get? There is one flavor. The CBBC did not have the budget for multiple flavors. The episode really focuses on Maria boldly and courageously resisting the temptation of Bubble Shock because she doesn't like how it tastes. That doesn't seem that serious. But it does provide a great little transition between Maria saying she'd prefer a cup of tea and Sarah Jane's cup of tea in the next scene. You see, Sarah Jane tried to sneak inside the factory with her sonic lipstick, but immediately gets caught. Man, why'd they write Sarah Jane to be so incompetent? Is it because the writers are gay and hate women? Boom. Roasted. But Sarah Jane has already spent a lot of time pestering the Bubble Shock company through calls and emails. Man, why'd these writers write Sarah Jane to be such a Karen? Is it because So instead of getting immediately escorted out of the building or just calling the police, this lady gives her an interview. Her name is Mrs. Wormwood. Sarah Jane points out that Wormwood is the name of a star in the Bible that falls to earth and poisons the water. When referencing this, Sarah Jane calls it the Book of Revelations. Let me get on my soapbox for a minute. It's Revelation. Singular. The revelation to John. Get your facts right, Sarah Jane. Why would they write her getting her facts wrong? Is it because they're gay and hate women? Did they get the reference wrong because they're gay and hate the Bible? I need to stop. I don't need people taking these jokes seriously. Mrs. Wormwood has a whole monologue about consumerism and how Bubble Shock is just satisfying the needs of the market for more flavors. Despite only having one flavor, she also claims that the secret ingredient, Bane, is super old and 100% organic. Less than a minute later, though, she's like, oh, it's all chemicals and sweeteners. Ma'am, is the drink organic or not? Why do these two gay men? Mrs. Wormwood then tries to convince Sarah Jane to drink Bubble Shock. Sarah Jane almost does, for some reason, but she resists the propaganda, saying she'd rather die. And honestly, that's just being a bad guest. This is really bad etiquette. She didn't even drink the cup of tea they gave her. Though, to be fair, it was probably Bubble Shock flavored tea, and I wouldn't have drunk that crap either. Kelsey sneaks off to phone a friend. She tries to find a place where she can make the call without being spotted and stumbles into the archetype's room, completely unguarded and unattended, because this is a kid show. When she makes the call, it sets off like 1,000 different alarms. Kelsey sees the Bane mother hiding in the ceiling and freaks the heck out. British Zac Efron says, "Stop, that's my mom." Shockingly, this does not help Kelsey calm down. Maria sneaks back into the factory to find Kelsey, for some reason, and tries to use her phone to call for help, triggering more alarms. It also wakes up the archetype, who gets up and runs away. The archetype and Maria bump into each other and look for a place to hide. The archetype is eventually named Luke, and he's a mainstay for most of the show. He's played by Tommy Knight, who was only 13 years old when this special was filmed. And boy does he look it. Bro may be the tallest of the main three here, but he is still in babyface land. Meanwhile, Sarah Jane is being escorted out of the facility, but Mrs. Wormwood told her secretary to kill Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane uses some Venusian Aikido to evade death, stumbles on Luke and Maria, and helps them escape. She tries to tell Maria to forget everything she saw and move on, but Maria's like, "I'm not a child, I can help," and Sarah Jane's all, "Nuh-uh," so Maria runs home and cries. Like a child. I joke, but I think Maria's character is actually handled really well throughout this show. She's always very much a kid with realistic kid problems, but without being incompetent or a coward. All the kids in this show feel like kids, and I buy these kids handling themselves in these situations. And part of that is earned by having moments like this where Maria is just a kid and gets told off by an adult she looks up to, and she reacts naturally. Mrs. Wormwood and British Zac Efron discuss their evil plans and how Sarah Jane has residual Artron energy from traveling in time. They decide they must find Sarah Jane Smith, and Kelsey helpfully tells them exactly where to find her.
Bannerman Road.
Kelsey, again, is really unlikable here. She demands to be let go, but first Mrs. Wormwood turns off her cloaking device and becomes her normal self and erases Kelsey's memories of the events. Sarah Jane talks to Luke, who isn't called Luke yet. He doesn't know his name, because he doesn't have one. Or he doesn't know anything. It's like he was born yesterday, except worse, because it was actually this morning. But he's not stupid. He teaches himself to read in like 5 minutes. Sarah Jane also realizes that he doesn't have a belly button, leading her to conclude that he was grown, not born. Zac Efron drops Kelsey off at Maria's house, then sneaks off to attack Sarah Jane. But in the time it takes for him to change into his Bane form, Kelsey fills in Maria on what happened, and Maria and Kelsey run across the street to warn Sarah Jane about Zac Efron. The CGI isn't fantastic or anything, but the production team goes above and beyond to show the creature interacting with the physical environment, which goes a long way. It feels like it's there, whereas I can't unsee the 15th Doctor not looking at Omega. Sarah Jane runs into the attic, momentarily leaving the children alone against a hideous monster.
This is so not happening. That contradicts the facts.
She returns in the nick of time with a spray that scares the Bane monster back into being Zac Efron, a fate worse than death. He then runs away, and Mrs. Wormwood eats him in a later scene as punishment. To thank Sarah Jane for saving her life, Kelsey directly disobeys her instructions and goes into the attic. Assuming that no one would even believe the children, Sarah Jane decides to tell them about aliens and the Doctor. But they're interrupted by an alert from K9. He's stuck closing a black hole created by Swiss scientists. But like I said, this is really just a way of writing K9 out of the show because of the Australian K9 spinoff that was being developed at this time. Tragic that we did not get more of this guy in the show. Sarah Jane's wristwatch thing detects alien life in Kelsey's bubble shock. That's right, the Bane ingredient is the Bane the aliens. So she summons Mr. Smith out of the wall to contact Mrs. Wormwood. Mr. Smith is Sarah Jane's secret alien computer and the show's equivalent to the TARDIS, basically. He can pretty much do whatever the plot needs him to, like somehow find the alien phone number for the bad guys. Sarah Jane and Mrs. Wormwood verbally spar for a bit, and Sarah Jane gives Mrs. Wormwood a chance to surrender peacefully. In response, Mrs. Wormwood asks her mom to accelerate their plans and start using Bane to mind control the population of Earth, including Maria's dad Alan. You know, they really could have used a mind-controlled Kelsey to cause a lot of problems for Sarah Jane in her attic, but instead they just really want Sarah Jane to also be mind-controlled. I guess the writers didn't have enough runtime to set up and deal with that problem. Probably because they're gay, and, time, stopwatches, all that. I don't know, the joke's not that funny anymore. The entire world is now full of bubble shock zombies.
What are we gonna do, Maria? Two types of people in the world. People who panic, and then there's us.
This is genuinely an incredible line, and Sarah Jane is full of lines like this in the show. She's genuinely a great role model for kids. The doors to the factory are deadlock sealed, but the doors to the bus aren't. Maria tries to use her phone to hurt the Bane mother, only it's not powerful enough. Luckily, Luke was playing with the communicator device that the potentially lesbian alien from the beginning of the episode gave to Sarah Jane. It can reach space. It is a much stronger signal. Luke uses his superintelligence to remember the numbers Mr. Smith used to contact the Bane earlier and calls them using the super-duper space phone. Logically, this causes the factory to explode, but don't worry, everyone got out on time. I mean everyone, including Mrs. Wormwood. She comes back in a later episode. The bubble shock zombies are explained away as mass hysteria from a chemical spill. Sarah Jane makes a point to be neighborly to Alan and claims Luke as her adopted son. But, as he's not called Luke yet and is dressed as a hospital patient, it is a very awkward interaction.
What's your name?
I don't have one. These are the clothes I was born in. This woman is rude.
Yes, definitely going.
As her parents start to argue about money, Maria sneaks off back to Sarah Jane's for some quote-unquote normal pop. Excuse me? But that's clearly lemonade. I thought pop was soda. That's straight up lemonade. That is not pop. Am I being punked? Did they think I wouldn't notice? Is it because they're gay? More importantly, it says a lot about how lonely Sarah Jane is that she gets attached to Maria so quickly, and it's really sweet. Together, they decide on Luke as a name for Luke and stare off into space while Sarah Jane once again talks about how life on Earth can be just as much of an adventure as her time with the Doctor. It's a sweet and hopeful message inspiring millions of young people to find their own adventures in life. Honestly, it's nothing crazy good, but it's solid for a kid's show. Sarah Jane and Maria are both excellent characters with a good connection. Luke is a little weaker, but there's a reason for that. Dude literally just became conscious, so I'm okay with him not having as much going on. Kelsey is a big weak point of the episode. She's just really annoying on screen. Mrs. Wormwood is a fantastically evil and campy villain who really sells every line. She is so much fun to watch. The Bane are good, ambitious villains for this first story, mediocre CGI and all. And I really think this episode does a great job of giving you an idea of what this show will be like. There's a reason this show developed its own audience outside of Doctor Who. Well, that's all I got for this one, but we've got 5 more series to go, so I'll be back.